She installed hidden cameras. She discovered neural implants in her own brain. But something beyond technology was there all along.
I never believed in madness until the day my nanny looked me in the eyes and said, "Your kids aren't real." My name is Soo-Jin Choi, and for 3 years I lived a lie so perfectly constructed that even now, looking back, I still wonder how I missed all the signs screaming at me to wake up. We lived in Vancouver, in one of those restored Victorian houses in Kitsilano, near the beach, where Korean families like ours paid fortunes to have that perfect Canadian life. The cherry blossoms bloomed every spring outside our bay windows, tourists flooded the streets during summer, and the rain, God, the constant Vancouver rain, drummed against our roof like 1,000 tiny warnings I never heard. It started when I hired the nanny. Claire Anderson seemed perfect. Impeccable references, warm smile, years of experience with children. She arrived on a rainy October afternoon, carrying just a small suitcase and that smile I thought was comforting. "You have beautiful children, Mrs. Choi," she said on her first day, watching Minho and Jihu playing in the living room. I smiled with pride, feeling like I'd finally found the help I desperately needed. My husband, David, worked as a surgeon at Vancouver General Hospital, endless shifts that kept him absent more than present. I had my own graphic design business, working from home, but the kids demanded constant attention. Minho was 5 years old, bursting with energy, always running through the house with his red Power Ranger. Jihu, my 3-year-old daughter, was quieter, preferring her coloring books and that stuffed bunny she called Mr. Fluffy. Claire integrated perfectly. She knew Korean recipes my own mother made, preparing jjigae and kimchi with surprising perfection. "I learned from a Korean family I cared for before," she explained when I asked, her accent flawless when she pronounced the dishes. She sang English lullabies that put the kids to sleep in minutes. She was so good that sometimes I felt inadequate as a mother, watching her natural ease with my own children. But small things started bothering me. First were the toys. I swore I'd bought Minho a blue toy car, but suddenly it was red. "It's always been red, Mrs. Choi," she would say gently, as if I was confused. Then came the photos. I took hundreds of pictures of the kids, but when I went to show them to my sister in Seoul via video chat, half of them had disappeared from my phone. The timestamps were wrong. Some photos I remember taking simply didn't exist. "You're stressed," David said when I mentioned these things. "Working too hard, not sleeping enough." He always took Claire's side. "She's great with the kids, Soo-Jin. Don't create problems where there aren't any." His dismissal stung, but maybe he was right. Maybe I was losing my mind. That's when I installed the security cameras. I told David it was for safety after that break-in at the neighbor's house 2 blocks down. But the truth? I needed to know what was happening when I wasn't looking. I installed 4 cameras: living room, kitchen, second floor hallway, and one hidden in the kids' bedroom, disguised in a teddy bear on the shelf. David never noticed. He was too busy saving lives at the hospital to notice his wife unraveling at home. The first week of recordings showed nothing wrong. Claire played with the children, prepared meals, cleaned the house. She was the perfect nanny. But then I noticed something strange. Sometimes when I left the room, Claire would stand completely still, just staring at the wall. Not for seconds, but for minutes at a time. The kids continued playing around her, but she didn't move, didn't blink, just stared like a statue frozen in time. Then came the conversations. Late at night, when David was at the hospital and I pretended to sleep in our bedroom, I'd hear her talking to someone on the phone. "Yes, it's working perfectly," she whispered. "She doesn't suspect anything yet. The protocols are being followed." My heart raced as I listened through the baby monitor I'd left accidentally on in the hallway. One night, after putting the kids to bed, Claire entered my office. I was reviewing the recordings, headphones on. She didn't know I could see her reflection in my screen. She stood in the doorway, watching me, for long, disturbing minutes. When I turned around, she was smiling. "Mrs. Choi, can I talk to you?" My stomach dropped. "Sure, Claire." She sat in the chair across from my desk, hands folded in her lap, that smile still present, but somehow empty. "I need to tell you something important, something that's going to change everything." "What is it?" My voice came out weaker than I wanted. "Your children," she paused, eyes locked on mine, "aren't real." The words hung in the air like poison. I laughed, a nervous, uncomfortable sound that echoed too loud in the small room. "What are you talking about? That's insane." "I know how it sounds, Mrs. Choi, but you need to understand. Those children upstairs, they're not what you think they are." Claire's voice was calm, clinical, like she was explaining a simple math problem to a confused student. "Get out!" The words left my mouth before I could think. "Get out of my house right now." Claire didn't move. "Check the cameras, Mrs. Choi. Really look at the footage. You'll see what I mean." She stood, walked to the door, then turned back. "I'll be gone by morning, but do yourself a favor. Watch the recordings from the kids' bedroom, especially at night. Really watch them." Then she disappeared down the hallway, her footsteps silent on the hardwood floors. I sat frozen, heart hammering against my ribs. My hands shook as I pulled up the camera feeds on my computer. The kids were asleep, Minho in his race car bed, Ji-woo clutching Mr. Fluffy. They looked so peaceful, so real, so mine. But Claire's words echoed. Really watch them. So I did. I started with that night's footage, fast-forwarding through hours of darkness. The kids slept. Nothing unusual. Then I went back further, to the previous night, the night before that. Always the same. Kids sleeping peacefully. Until I saw it. At exactly 3:47 a.m., 3 nights ago, both children sat up simultaneously. Not like kids waking from sleep, but like puppets pulled by invisible strings. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, inhuman in their precision. They turned their heads toward the camera in unison, toward me, and smiled. Not the innocent smiles of children, but something else entirely. Something that made my blood run cold even through a screen. The smiles were too wide, stretching their faces in ways that shouldn't be possible. Their eyes reflected the camera's infrared light, glowing like an animal's eyes caught in headlights. They held that position for exactly 90 seconds. I could see the timestamp taking away on the bottom of the screen. 90 seconds of perfect stillness, those unnatural smiles never wavering, never blinking. Then, as if someone had cut their strings, they lay back down in perfect synchronization. The whole thing lasted exactly 90 seconds, no more, no less. My hands shook as I scrolled back through more footage. I checked the previous night, same thing, 3:47 a.m., sit up, turn, smile, lie down. The night before that, same routine. I went back weeks, months, every single night since I'd installed the cameras. The exact same behavior at the exact same time. How had I not seen this before? How had I watched hours of footage and missed something so obvious, so disturbing? I ran upstairs, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. I throw open their bedroom door, letting it bang against the wall. Both kids were sleeping peacefully, breathing softly, looking exactly like they always did. Minho was curled up with his Power Ranger clutched to his chest. Ji-woo had her thumb in her mouth, Mr. Fluffy tucked under her arm. I touched Minho's face. Warm, real, solid. His skin felt exactly how a child's skin should feel. I picked up Jiwoo and she stirred, mumbling sleepily in that way kids do when they're pulled from deep dreams. "Mommy?" she whispered, her voice small and confused. This was my daughter. This was real. This had to be real. Didn't it? I carried her to my bedroom, laid her down next to David, who was snoring softly, oblivious to my panic. I went back for Minho, gathering him into my arms. He was getting too big to carry easily, but I managed, my maternal instinct overriding logic. I needed them close. I needed to watch them. I sat in the chair in our bedroom, watching both kids sleep in our bed, watching David sleep beside them. My perfect family. My real family. But I couldn't stop thinking about those smiles, those synchronized, inhuman movements. The next morning, Claire was gone. I woke up to find her room completely empty, stripped clean like she'd never existed at all. No clothes in the closet, no toiletries in the bathroom, no note on the bed, nothing. The room looked like it had been vacant for months, dust on the furniture, that stale smell rooms get when no one's used them. "David," I shook him awake. "The nanny's gone." He blinked at me confused. "What nanny?" The room tilted. Claire Anderson, the nanny we hired 3 months ago." "Honey, we don't have a nanny. We've never had a nanny." He sat up, his doctor face sliding into place, calm, rational, concerned. "Are you feeling okay? Maybe you should lie down." No, she was here. She took care of the kids every day. She cooked Korean food. She told me our kids aren't real. David's expression shifted from concern to alarm. "Soojin, listen to yourself. What you're saying doesn't make sense." I pulled out my phone, hands trembling. "I'll call the agency. They'll confirm it." I dialed the number, the same agency I'd used months ago. A cheerful woman answered. "Good morning, Elite Family Care. How can I help you?" "Yes, I hired a nanny through you, Claire Anderson. I need to speak to her." There was a pause, the sound of typing. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have no record of a Claire Anderson ever working for us." "That's impossible. I hired her through you 3 months ago." "According to our database, Mrs. Choi, you called to inquire about our services 2 years ago, but you canceled the request. We haven't heard from you since." I hung up, the phone slipping from my fingers. The room was spinning. David caught me before I could fall. "Soojin, what's happening? Talk to me." "The nanny. She was here. She was real. She said our kids aren't real." David held my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. "What nanny? Honey, you've been taking care of the kids yourself. You always have. There's never been anyone else." I pushed past him, stumbled down the hallway to the kids' room. Minho and Jiwoo were there, playing with their toys on the floor. They looked up when I entered, and Jiwoo smiled. "Mommy, wanna play blocks with us?" "Mommy!" Jiwoo ran to me and I scooped her up. She was solid, warm, real. She giggled as I spun her around. Minho came over too, wrapping his arms around my legs. Real. They were real. Of course they were real. But that night, I watched the cameras again. This time, I watched with different eyes, looking for things I might have missed. And there, buried in the metadata of the video files, I found something strange. The timestamps were corrupted. Some frames were missing entirely. And in certain sections, especially around 3:47 a.m., there were glitches. Split-second distortions where the image seemed to skip or blur. I enhanced one of these glitches frame by frame, and in that single frame, for just a fraction of a second, the children's faces were different. Older. Wrong. Their features were subtly off, like someone had tried to recreate them from memory but got the details slightly wrong. I started going through older files on my computer, photos from years past. Minho's 4th birthday party, Jiwoo's 2nd birthday. I pulled them up and compared them side by side with recent photos. The kids looked the same. Same faces, same expressions. But something was wrong with the eyes. When I zoomed in, really looked closely, there was something off about the eyes in the recent photos. They were too reflective, catching light in ways that didn't quite match the environment. Then I found the folder. It was buried deep in my computer's directory, hidden under layers of system files, password protected with a combination I didn't remember creating. But when I tried Minho's birthday, 04-12-2020, the folder opened. Inside were hundreds of documents, medical records, psychiatric evaluations, hospital discharge papers, all with my name on them, all dated over the past 5 years. Patient exhibits severe symptoms of phantom child syndrome following traumatic loss. Subject has constructed elaborate delusional children, complete with personalities, habits, and detailed histories. Recommends continued observation and high-dose antipsychotic medication. The date on the document was from 6 months ago. The doctor's signature was one I recognized, Dr. Rebecca Winters, a psychiatrist at Vancouver General Hospital, the same hospital where David worked. I scrolled through more documents, reports from multiple doctors all saying the same thing. I was delusional. The kids weren't real. I'd been creating them in my mind since the accident 5 years ago. The accident. I searched for that in the files. Found a police report dated May 15, 2020. A collision at the intersection of Marine Drive and Granville. My car. 2 fatalities. Minho Kim, age 5. Jiwoo Kim, age 3. The report was clinical, detached. It described how I'd been driving, how another car had run a red light, how I'd swerved but not fast enough, how the impact had killed both children instantly, how I'd survived with minor injuries but severe psychological trauma. My hands were numb as I read. This wasn't true. It couldn't be true. I would remember something like that. You don't forget losing your children. But then why did I have no memory of Minho's 6th birthday or Jiwoo's 4th? The birthdays I should have celebrated this year and last year. When I tried to remember them, there was nothing. Just fog, just blank space where memories should be. I called my sister in Seoul. It was morning there. Yoonji answered on the 3rd ring, her voice already concerned. Sujin, is everything okay? I need you to tell me the truth. Do I have children? The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear her breathing, could almost feel her choosing her words carefully across the ocean. Sujin, we've talked about this, remember? Just answer the question, please. The accident was 5 years ago. The kids, they didn't make it, little sister. You were in the hospital for weeks. Don't you remember any of this? The phone slipped from my hands, clattering on the desk. No, that wasn't true. My children were upstairs right now. I could hear them playing. I could hear Minho's toy cars making zoom noises. I could hear Jiwoo shooing to her stuffed animals. I ran upstairs. The kids' room was empty. The toys were scattered on the floor, but there was no one there. I checked the bathroom, the hallway, our bedroom. Empty, all empty. Minho, Jiwoo! My voice came out as a desperate shriek. I ran downstairs. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. Minho! Jiwoo! Where are you? Then I heard it, faint laughter coming from the basement. I threw open the basement door, took the stairs 2 at a time. The basement was unfinished, just concrete and storage boxes, and nothing. No one was there, but I'd heard them. I knew I'd heard them. I went back upstairs, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I looked at the security camera monitors in David's office. I pulled up the live feed from every room. Living room, empty. Kitchen, empty. Kids' room, empty. But the toys were moving. The blocks were stacking themselves. The toy cars were rolling across the floor with no one pushing them. I was losing my mind. Or I'd already lost it years ago. That's when I saw it in the live feed from the kids' room, a shadow. Not cast by anything visible, but moving independently across the wall. It formed into words, "We're still here, Mommy." I ran to the kids' room. The shadow was gone. The toys had stopped moving. Everything was still. But on the wall, written in what looked like crayon, were the same words. "We're still here, Mommy." My legs gave out. I collapsed on the floor, surrounded by my children's toys in a room that might have been empty for years. David found me there an hour later. He'd gotten a call from my sister, worried after our conversation. He sat down next to me on the floor, put his arm around my shoulders. I think it's time we talk about this, Sujin. Really talk about it. Our children are real. Our children were real 5 years ago, but they're gone now, honey. They've been gone. Then explain the cameras, explain the footage, explain the writing on the wall. He looked at the wall. It was blank. Clean white paint. No words, no crayon marks. There's nothing there, Sujin. I pulled out my phone, opened the video app, rewound to 3:47 a.m. from last night. Watch this. Just watch. David looked at the screen. I watched his face carefully, looking for any sign that he saw what I saw. But his expression remained unchanged, concerned but calm. What am I supposed to be seeing? The kids, sitting up, smiling at the camera. Honey, the beds are empty. There's no one there. I looked at the screen. He was right. The beds were empty, but I'd seen them. I knew I'd seen them. Or had I? I started crying then, deep, body-shaking sobs that came from a place of absolute loss. David held me, rocking me gently like he must have done 5 years ago when our world ended. I don't want to forget them, I whispered. You don't have to forget them, but you have to accept that they're gone. What if they're not gone? What if they're just somewhere else? David was quiet for a long moment. Then, the doctors say the medication will help. You've been refusing to take it, haven't you? I had been. The pills David left on my bedside table every morning, I'd been throwing them away, flushing them down the toilet. They made me foggy, made me forget. And I didn't want to forget. The medication makes them disappear. The medication helps you see reality clearly. What if my reality is the real one? What if you're all wrong? David pulled away slightly, looked at me with those serious doctor eyes. Sujin, I love you. I've loved you since we met in university. And I've watched you suffer for 5 years trapped in this delusion because you can't accept what happened. The kids are gone. It's time to let them go. I can't. You have to. For yourself. For us. For any chance we have at a future. I looked around a kid's room. Really looked at it. The toys were dusty. The beds looked like they hadn't been slept in months. There were no clothes in the drawers, no shoes by the door. How had I not noticed? Because I didn't want to see it. Because accepting it meant accepting that the last 5 years of my life had been a lie I told myself to survive unbearable pain. David helped me up, led me back to our bedroom. He gave me one of the pills. Please, Sujin, just try, for me. I looked at the pill in my hand. Small, white, innocuous. The thing that would make my children disappear. The thing that would bring me back to reality. I swallowed it. Within an hour, I felt different. The fog that had been clouding my vision began to lift, and with brutal clarity, I started to remember, really remember. The accident, the hospital, the funerals, the months of grief counseling, moving back into our house, unable to pack away the kids' things, slowly losing my grip on reality, seeing them in corners, hearing their voices, until the delusions became so real I couldn't tell them from memory. David had been patient, so patient, sleeping in the guest room when I insisted the kids needed our bed, pretending to set places at dinner for children who weren't there, going along with my delusions because the alternative, forcing me to confront reality, might break me completely. I cried that night, really cried, mourning not just my children, but the 5 years I'd lost to grief so profound it had fractured my mind. But something still didn't feel right. The next morning, I felt clearer than I had in years. The medication was working, but with that clarity came questions. I went back to the security footage with fresh eyes. If the children had never been there, why had I installed security cameras at all? I checked the purchase date, 3 months ago, right when Claire had appeared. And there was something else. In the metadata of the video files, There were traces of editing. Someone had manipulated the footage. Not me. I barely knew how to work the security system. Someone else had been accessing our home network remotely, editing the videos, adding glitches and distortions. I called a tech specialist, someone David didn't know. They came while he was at work. A young Korean guy named Jin, who specialized in digital forensics. Someone's definitely been messing with these files, he confirmed after an hour of analysis. See here, these timestamps don't match. And there's evidence of deep fake technology. Someone has been inserting images into your footage. What kind of images? He showed me. Frame by frame, he extracted the manipulated sections. And there they were, Minho and Jiwoo. Not as I remembered them, but as they would be now. Older. 7 and 5. Someone had been digitally inserting aged-up versions of my dead children into my security footage. Who would do this? I asked. I don't know, but whoever they are, they're sophisticated. This isn't amateur work. After Jin left, I did something I should have done weeks ago. I checked our bank accounts. David handled most of our finances, but I had access. What I found made my blood run cold. Regular payments to something called Quantum Care Services. Thousands of dollars paid monthly for the past 2 years. I Googled the company. Nothing. It didn't seem to exist. I called the number listed on the bank transactions. A woman answered, professional and cold. Quantum Care Services. I'm calling about payments made from my account. Can you tell me what services we're receiving? I'm sorry, I need your client authorization code. I don't have one. My husband set this up. Then you'll need to speak with him. We can't discuss client services without proper authorization. She hung up. I searched David's office, something I'd never done in 16 years of marriage. In a locked drawer, I found the key hidden in his desk. I discovered files. Lots of files. About me, about the accident, but also about something else. A treatment program. Experimental, testing the limits of grief-induced delusions and how to manipulate them.
Amen, he'd insisted I take. They weren't helping me heal. They were keeping me sick, keeping me trapped in a delusion they could study and control. But there was more. A thick folder labeled Quantum Care Services, Project Resurrection. Inside were schematics that looked like something from a science fiction movie, diagrams of neural networks, brainwave patterns, something called consciousness field manipulation. The project description made my blood run cold. Using advanced AI and quantum computing, Project Resurrection aims to create interactive simulations of deceased individuals that can respond to environmental stimuli and user interaction in real time. Initial trials with widows and widowers show promising results. Expansion to child loss scenarios presents unique challenges due to the intensity of parental attachment. They were building artificial versions of dead people, digital ghosts, and I was their test subject. I kept reading, my horror growing with each page. The technology was sophisticated beyond anything I'd imagined. They'd collected every photo I had ever taken of Minho and Jiwoo, every video, every voice recording. They'd used machine learning to create predictive models of how the children would grow, age, change. They'd synthesized their voices, their mannerisms, even their personalities. The hallucinations I'd been having weren't entirely in my head. They were augmented reality projections beamed directly into my visual cortex through the vitamins David gave me. Nanoscaled technology that crossed the brain-brain barrier and interfaced with my neural pathways. I was seeing computer-generated versions of my children designed to be indistinguishable from reality, all while thinking I was going insane.
But something in the documents caught my attention. Recent reports marked urgent and anomaly. Dr. Marsh's notes from the past month showed increasing concern. Subject is reporting interactions with children that don't match our programmed parameters. She describes behaviors and conversations we didn't code. Either the AI is becoming more sophisticated than intended, or something else is happening. Subject's brain scans show unusual activity in regions not typically associated with hallucination. Recommend immediate evaluation. Another note. Security footage shows electromagnetic anomalies at 3:47 a.m. every night. These are not part of our system. Equipment malfunctions have increased by 400%. Team suspects external interference, but source remains unknown. And then, dated just 2 days ago, emergency meeting notes. Subject's neural interface has stopped responding to our controls. She appears to be perceiving something we're not projecting. Dr. Choi, David, suggests terminating the experiment, but board wants to continue observation. This is beyond our initial parameters. So even David's sophisticated technology couldn't explain everything I'd been experiencing. The synchronized movements at 3:47 a.m., the shadows that wrote messages, the feeling that my children were really, truly there, that wasn't all artificial. Something real was happening beneath the simulation. I heard the front door open. David was home early. I quickly photographed every document with my phone, uploaded them to a cloud account he didn't know about, then carefully replaced everything in the drawer. By the time he found me in the living room, I was sitting calmly on the couch, a book open in my lap that I wasn't reading. "Hey," he said, leaning down to kiss my forehead. The gesture made my skin crawl. "How was your day?" "Fine," I lied. "Quiet." He studied me for a moment, those analytical doctor eyes searching for signs of distress. "Did you take your medication this morning?" "Of course." Another lie. I'd been flushing the pills for weeks. "Good." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I brought home some documents to work on tonight. I'll be in my office if you need me." I waited until I heard his office door close, then quietly went upstairs to the kids' room. I needed to think. The space where my children should have been felt heavy with absence and possibility. If the technology couldn't account for everything I'd been experiencing, what could? Were my children really trying to contact me from somewhere beyond? Or was my grief-broken mind creating meaning from random electromagnetic noise? I pulled out my phone and called the one person who might understand, my mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. It was early morning in Seoul. "Soojin, what's wrong?" "Oma, do you remember Halmoni? My grandmother had died when I was 12, but she'd been deeply spiritual, a believer in things science couldn't explain." "Of course, dear. Why?" "Did she ever say that death isn't an ending? That spirits linger when love is strong enough? Do you remember?" A long pause. "Yes. She said that's how she knew when her mother passed. Even though she was on the other side of the country, she felt her presence, said goodbye to her spirit before anyone called with the news." "Why are you asking about this now? Do you think it's real, or was it just belief? Faith?" "I think," my mother said carefully, "that there are things in this world we don't understand yet. Things that exist in the spaces between what we can measure and what we can feel. Your grandmother believed the heart has ways of knowing that the mind cannot explain. What if I told you I've been seeing Minho and Jiwoo?" Another pause. longer this time. Are you taking your medication? Everyone always asked about the medication. Yes, Oma, but I need to know, is it possible? Could they still be here somehow? In Korean tradition, we believe the dead can linger for up to 49 days. After that, they must move on. But sometimes, if the attachment is strong enough, if the grief is deep enough, they can leave echoes, imprints on the world they left behind. It's been 5 years. Then what you're seeing isn't them, child. It's either your mind creating comfort or something else, something that's been using their memory for its own purposes.
She had Korean folklore about goblins and trickster spirits that could assume any form. I'd thought they were just stories. You think something is pretending to be my children? I think you should be very careful about what you invite into your home, Soojin. And I think you should ask yourself, when you see them, do they feel like your children? Really feel like them? Or do they feel like something trying very hard to pass as your children? After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of the kids' room, really thinking about that question. When I saw Minho and Jiwoo in my delusions, did they feel right? The answer was complicated. Sometimes yes. Sometimes they were exactly as I remembered, their laughs, their voices, their little habits. But other times there was something off. Minho would use phrases he'd never learned. Jiwoo would know things she couldn't possibly know. And those smiles at 3:47 a.m., those had never been my children's smiles. What if both things were true? What if David's experiment had opened a door and my children's spirits had been trying to reach through it, but something else was reaching through too? I needed more information. I needed to know exactly what technology David had been using on me. If there was nanotechnology in my brain, I needed to know how it worked and how to disable it. The next day, while David was at the hospital, I called a lawyer. Not a regular lawyer, one who specialized in medical malpractice and experimental treatment violations. I explained everything, sent her copies of the documents I'd photographed. "Mrs. Choi," she said after reviewing them, "what your husband has done is highly illegal, conducting experimental medical procedures without proper informed consent, even with a signature obtained under duress or while mentally compromised. This is criminal. You have grounds for prosecution." "I don't want to prosecute, not yet. I want to understand what's been done to me. Can you help me find an independent neurologist? Someone who can scan my brain and tell me what's really there?" She gave me a name, Dr. Sarah Kim at UBC Hospital, a specialist in neurotechnology who'd written papers on the ethical implications of neural enhancement. Someone David didn't know, who didn't work at his hospital. The scan took 3 hours. Dr. Sarah Kim didn't ask many questions, just did her work with quiet efficiency. When she showed me the results, her face was grave. "Mrs. Choi, you had extensive neural implants, microscopic devices throughout your visual cortex, auditory processing centers, and memory formation regions. This is highly advanced technology, more advanced than anything I've seen in legal applications. Can they be removed? That's complicated. They've integrated with your neural tissue. Removing them surgically would cause significant damage. But there might be another way. I've been developing a counter-signal therapy. Essentially, we can disrupt the external controls, let your brain reassert its natural patterns. It won't remove the devices, but it will neutralize them." Do it. The treatment took a week. Every day I sat in Dr. Kim's lab with electrodes attached to my head, receiving carefully calibrated electromagnetic pulses designed to break the technology's hold on my brain. David noticed something was wrong. I made excuses about having headaches, needing space. He grew increasingly anxious, checking his computer more frequently, making hushed phone calls I wasn't supposed to hear. On the 7th day, something broke. I felt it like a switch flipping in my mind. The world suddenly became sharper, clearer, but also emptier. The warm glow that had followed me around, the sense of my children's presence, it vanished. I was truly, completely alone with reality. But that night at 3:47 a.m., something different happened. I wasn't even in the kids' room. I was in bed with David sleeping beside me. But I woke to the sound of children's voices,
not in my head, real voices coming from downstairs. I crept down the stairs, my heart pounding. The voices were clearer now, and I realized with a shock that they weren't speaking English or Korean. It was something else, something that sounded almost like language but wasn't quite. The living room was ice cold. My breath came out in clouds, and there, standing in the center of the room, were two figures. They looked like Minho and Jiwoo, but wrong. Their proportions were slightly off, their movements too smooth, their eyes too bright in the darkness. "Hello, Mommy," said the thing that looked like Jiwoo, but the voice was all wrong, layered, echoing like multiple voices speaking in unison. "You're not my children." The figures tilted their heads in perfect synchronization. "No, but we wore their faces well, didn't we? You believed in us. Your grief fed us, made us strong." "What are you?" "We are what slips through when the barrier between worlds grows thin, when scientists play with forces they don't understand. Your husband opened a door with his technology, tore holes in the fabric between here and there. We simply walked through." My mother's words came back to me. Dokayebi, trickster spirits. But these weren't folklore. They were something real, something that had been trapped on the other side until David's experiment provided a bridge. "The real Minho and Jiwoo," I whispered. "Where are they?" The figures smiled those two wide smiles. "Where all of the dead go. But we've been keeping them from moving on. Their consciousness, their energy, it's been so useful, anchoring us here, giving us power. Your love for them has been like a battery, charging us every time you reached out." Rage flooded through me. "Let them go." "Why would we do that? We're comfortable here. Your world is so much more interesting than the space between. And there are so many more doors opening now. So many bereaved parents, so many scientists trying to bring back the dead. Each attempt tears the barrier a little more. Soon, we won't need your children at all. Soon we'll have thousands of anchors." I said, let them go. I don't know where the strength came from. Maybe from anger. Maybe from a mother's instinct to protect her children, even in death. But something in me pushed back against these creatures with a force I didn't know I possessed. The figures staggered backward. "You can't fight us. We're beyond your understanding." "Maybe, but you're in my house, and you're wearing my children's faces without permission. I know my children. I carried them, birthed them, raised them. Whatever you are, you're not them, and I want them back." I closed my eyes and did something that felt insane, but also exactly right. I remembered my children, not as the delusions had shown them, not as these creatures pretended to be, but as they truly were. Every imperfect moment, every tantrum, every skinned knee, every bedtime story. I remembered the weight of Jiwoo in my arms when she was born, the sound of Minho's first word. I remembered them dying in that accident, their last moments, the unfairness and horror of it all. I let myself feel all of it, the love and the loss, the grief and the rage, the memories and the absence. I didn't hide from the pain anymore. I faced it fully. And in facing it, something shifted. The false children screamed, a sound that hurt my ears and seemed to come from everywhere at once. They began to dissolve, their forms breaking apart like static. "We can't. We need the anchor. The anchor is broken. My children are free. You have no claim here anymore." The room exploded with light. I heard David shouting from upstairs, running down, but I kept my eyes closed, kept holding on to the truth of my memories, the real grief instead of the manufactured delusion. When I finally opened my eyes, the room was warm again. The creatures were gone. And standing where they had been, translucent and fading, but unmistakably real, were my children. My actual children. Minho and Jiwoo looked tired, but peaceful. Jiwoo smiled, her real smile, the one with the slight overbite she'd been self-conscious about. Minho had that cowlick in his hair that never wanted to stay down. "Mommy," Jiwoo said, her voice faint but clear. "We've been trying to call you for so long, but those things kept getting in the way." "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry I let them use you." "It's okay. We knew you'd figure it out. You always figure things out." David crashed into the room, then froze when he saw them. That's impossible. The technology is disabled. How? This isn't your technology. This is real." We had maybe 5 minutes with them. 5 minutes to say the things we'd needed to say for 5 years. To tell them we loved them, that we were sorry, that we'd eventually be okay. To hear them say they weren't scared anymore, that they were ready to go somewhere better, somewhere the creatures couldn't reach them. "Will it hurt?" Minho asked. "No, sweetheart. It'll be like falling asleep, and when you wake up, you'll be somewhere wonderful." "Will you come someday?" "Someday, but not for a long time. We have to live our lives first. That's how we honor you. By living." Jiwoo reached out and, though her hand passed through mine like mist, I swear I could feel it, warm and small and perfect. "Goodbye, Mommy. Goodbye, Daddy. We love you. We love you too, forever." And then they were gone. Really, truly, finally gone. Not trapped, not manipulated, not used as anchors for things that shouldn't exist. Just gone. To wherever it is that souls go when they're finally allowed to rest. David collapsed next to me, sobbing. "What have I done? Oh God, what have I done?" "You tried to help, though I wasn't sure I meant it. You just didn't understand what you were dealing with." Over the following weeks, everything came out. David confessed everything to the medical board. Project Resurrection was shut down immediately. Dr. Helena Marsh and 3 other researchers were arrested. The technology was deemed too dangerous, the ethical violations too severe. Other test subjects were identified and given treatment to remove or neutralize their neural implants. David lost his medical license. He faces criminal charges. Our marriage probably won't survive this. How can it after what he did? But I also learned something from the investigation. The creatures I'd encountered weren't isolated incidents. Across the world, similar phenomena had been reported wherever grief therapy experiments were conducted. Scientists had been unknowingly opening doors to something beyond human understanding, creating bridges for things that shouldn't cross over. Now teams of physicists, psychologists, and yes, even spiritual practitioners from various traditions are working together to understand and close these breaches. They call me sometimes, asking about my experience. I tell them what I can, though I'm not sure how much of it they truly believe. I still see Dr. Sarah Kim for checkups. The neural implants are permanent, but dormant. Sometimes I wonder if they could be reactivated, if I could see my children again, even as illusions. But I won't. That's not honoring them. That's holding on when I need to let go. I moved out of the house. Got a smaller apartment near the ocean where I can hear the waves and smell the salt air. I'm learning to live with grief instead of running from it. Some days are hard. Some days I barely make it through. But some days I feel almost okay. I keep a photo of Minho and Jiwoo on my nightstand, real photos, from before the accident. I look at them every morning and every night. I remember them as they were, not as the delusions had shown them, not as these creatures pretended to be, but as they truly were. I remember them and I live. That's all I can do. That's all any of us can do when we lose someone. Remember, grieve, and eventually, slowly, impossibly, find a way to keep going. The cameras are gone now. I don't need to watch empty rooms hoping to catch glimpses of children who can't return. I know they're gone. I know they're at peace. And I know that someday, when my own time comes, I'll see them again. But not today. Today, I live. I breathe. I exist in reality, however painful that reality might be. Because that's what they would want. That's how I honor them. Not through delusion or technology or desperate attempts to hold on to what's lost, but by living the life they can't. By being present in the world they had to leave. That's the truth I finally learned after years of grief, manipulation, and genuine supernatural horror. Love doesn't mean holding on forever. Love means letting go when you need to, even when it breaks your heart. My children are gone, but they were real. They were loved, and they're finally free. That has to be enough. It is enough. But I also learned something from the investigation. The creatures I'd encountered weren't isolated incidents. Across the world, similar phenomena had been reported wherever grief therapy experiments were conducted. Scientists had been unknowingly opening doors to something beyond human understanding, creating bridges for things that shouldn't cross over. Now teams of physicists, psychologists, and, yes, even spiritual practitioners from various traditions are working together to understand and close these breaches. They call me sometimes, asking about my experience. I tell them what I can, though I'm not sure how much of it they truly believe. I still see Dr. Sarah Kim for checkups. The neural implants are permanent but dormant. Sometimes I wonder if they could be reactivated, if I could see my children again, even as illusions. But I won't. That's not honoring them. That's holding on when I need to let go. I moved out of the house, got a smaller apartment near the ocean where I can hear the waves and smell the salt air. I'm learning to live with grief instead of running from it. Some days are hard. Some days I barely make it through. But some days, I feel almost okay. I keep a photo of Minho and Jiwoo on my nightstand. Real photos from before the accident. I look at them every morning and every night. I remember them as they were, not as delusions or digital reconstructions or creatures wearing their faces. I remember them, and I live. That's all I can do. That's all any of us can do when we lose someone. Remember, grieve, and eventually, slowly, impossibly, find a way to keep going. The cameras are gone now. I don't need to watch empty rooms anymore, hoping to catch glimpses of children who can't return. I know they're gone. I know they're at peace. And I know that someday, when my own time comes, I'll see them again. But not today. Today, I live. I breathe. I exist in reality, however painful that reality might be. Because that's what they would want. That's how I honor them. Not through delusion or technology or desperate attempts to hold on to what's lost, but by living the life they can't, by being present in the world they had to leave. That's the truth I finally learned, after years of grief, manipulation, and genuine supernatural horror. Love doesn't mean holding on forever. Love means letting go when you need to, even when it breaks your heart. My children are gone, but they were real, they were loved, and they're finally free. That has to be enough. It is enough.